So as a child, I grew up with books everywhere, like the whole house was a library. So my passion for language, literature, poetry, the written word, the spoken word stems from there. I actually had a time away from rap. So that made me reevaluate the nature of those relationships. And it was a moment of clarity in that I understood how transactional and utilitarian many relationships are. So if you're out of sight, you're out of mind.
Did you change the way you speak now as you've obviously grown up and evolved? Because I noticed that, because when you're younger or you get older, you learn to kind of be a comedian and adapt to the surroundings and speak in the way of the surrounding. Because I remember we all were but into the rap game when I was younger. And I was very good. And I'll say that for myself. I don't care if anyone else says it or not, but I was very good. But I never wanted to be a rapper.
Really interesting.
I only started rapping because the people around me were into rapping.
Like I say, all the points you're raising have been and will be valid avenues of research at a very high academic level. So they're ideas that people take very seriously, and you're putting them out there, and they're great questions. So I think that PhD awaits you, bro.
I told you my freestyling was good. You've been there. Do you know what I mean? And the world has kind of adapted around you.
We try to warp reality to our sheer force of will. Thank you. I feel honored and privileged to be given this illustrious introduction that I'm doing myself. Tommy Evans, multi-hyphenate creative artist. That can be the start.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you know what's going to annoy me? And we'll get into it later. You have a PhD in linguistics.
Correct.
And you didn't have to tell me that for me to know that, because you speak so eloquently.
I try.
And I'm just like, wait, bruv, it's another episode. Let's go. Fucking get it. Do you know what I mean? But actually, what came first? Obviously the hip hop, right? Because we were all rappers when we were 13.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to rewind and travel further back in time before hip hop. So I'm from a family of artists. My dad worked at the art college that I did my first degree at, not so humble brag. And my dad's side of the family is very fascinating because his brother, my paternal uncle, is married to a Portuguese lady who is a very successful artist. Their story is incredible. My uncle was traveling through Europe. I think it was like the equivalent of the gap year in the 70s, whatever young people did then, obviously before our time. And he met my auntie on a train. Now, my uncle was due to be returning to the UK, but he met my auntie and it was love at first sight.
The stars were aligned.
And so he went to Portugal instead of going back to the UK. And they were part of an artist dissidence group that also included Paulo Rego, who's arguably the greatest Portuguese artist of the 20th and thus far of the 21st century. And they were producing artwork that was critical of the regime there at the time as a right-wing authoritarian, basically a dictatorship.
So art as in drawing, painting?
Visual arts,
visual
correct.
Arts. Okay.
And they were critical of Salazar, who was the guy who was in charge. And they were actually being monitored by the secret police.
Wow.
Yeah, which they only found out years later. So their son, my cousin, is an architect. He ran an architectural firm in Brazil for many years. His wife is Brazilian. They've now got their architectural firm in Lisbon, Portugal. So I have that whole branch of my family who's very artistic and creative. And then my mum spent many years teaching. So as a child, I grew up with books everywhere, like the whole house was a library. So my passion for language, literature, poetry, the written word, the spoken word stems from there. But also my mum had quite a extensive record collection as well. And she was very much into 60s soul, 70s funk, 80s R&B, that sort of stuff. She had a signed record from Shabba Ranks.
Wow.
And it gets better. My mum's first ever concert she went to was to see the Rolling Stones, who she met. My mum saw Ike and Tina Turner in a Roman amphitheater in France. She saw little Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
But the best one of all is she met Jimi Hendrix.
Wow.
So her friends were supporting The Experience, Jimi Hendrix band in Cheshire, which is where my mum was living at the time. My grandfather, who was a manager for BT, his son was from a working class background. He was so exceptional that he just fast tracked into management and leadership. The most kind, gentle gentleman you'd meet. So they moved around a lot. And my mum was in Cheshire at the time, and her friends were supporting Jimi Hendrix and the Experience. So, yeah, do you want to come meet Jimmy? And she was like, yeah. So they went into his caravan where he was staying, and it was a smoky interior, shall we say. Very smoky. And he was having his hair done by two young ladies, and he was sort of going, yeah, like the whole time. But she had an autograph from him that she got valued by Christie's or Sotheby's at about £500 or something. So
then.
Oh no, not in the 60s. This was probably like a number of years later. I imagine it's way more now. Yeah, way more now. Yeah. That's way more now. So if you can imagine, young TE has been inducted into this environment and ecosystem of art, language, literature, music. I also worked at a theatre in Leeds. My grandparents would take me there to see opera as a kid. So I'd just been exposed to a lot of creative disciplines, but my love, my passion was for hip-hop culture. So that's sort of where the story begins. And so I did a rewind there.
And it started with American hip-hop culture. Like what?
Yes.
If you could pinpoint the track that kind of unlocked that, because that's how it happens with music, with film. There's always like that one film. Like everybody watches films, but every filmmaker will say, no, when I saw the lighting in this film, it changed everything. Or when I heard the instrumental, or when I saw this, or when I heard, Big L put the words together in that way, that's what made me, because everyone was listening to hip hop. But when you find artists and people of, high caliber lyrics, they're not going to say Jay-Z, Biggie. They're going to say Nas, Tupac, because they're going to say KRS-One. Right? The people who are into lyrics. And I'm thinking, because one thing is kind of funny, and I'm going to keep going back to this. PhD in linguistics.
Yeah.
Hip hop. Now, speaking to you, I would think this is the politest rapper I've ever met in my life. Like, do you know what I mean? Have you seen, it reminds me of those rap battles. Have you seen those compliment rap battles?
Yeah, they're incredible.
That's what I think of that, because you're so well spoken that I feel like I can't see any aggression or any.
You're seeing the more refined version of myself. I have been that battle rapper in the past, and
did you change the way you speak now as you've obviously grown up and evolved? Because I noticed that, because obviously when I was younger, I mean, now I'm still speaking like this way, but when you're younger or you get older, you learn to kind of be a comedian and adapt to the surroundings and speak in the way of the surrounding. Because I remember I'd be with my friends and I'd speak in one way. I'd go home. I'm not speaking like that around my parents.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you find that you were always quite well spoken? Because coming from a family of the arts and all that stuff, I'm sure they were they were pinpointing, hey, we don't say that. Pronounce your T's and all that stuff. Did you find that you had to change the way you talk for hip hop or the other way around?
That's such a good question. So the technical term is code switching, where you adapt your language, your jargon to different audiences, settings, demographics, and so forth. And it's a very natural human thing. Having studied sociolinguistics when I was doing my MA, it's really fascinating, the discussions that take place in that arena about language and how all forms of English are equally legitimate. They all follow a structure, a grammatical system. So you're talking about glottaling, where you drop your T's, bottle rather than bottle. Or my American crew are like, bottle of water. It just so happens that the repertoire of the elite has evolved to be in this illustrious position where it's deemed to be proper English, and therefore the standard that one has to aspire to receive pronunciation. But equally, multicultural London vernacular has a set of grammatical rules as well. It might differ from received pronunciation, but it is an ordered, logical form of communication. It's not valued as much in terms of cultural capital as if you're a BBC newsreader. And I think it's about empowering young people so that they can adapt, and not in a contrived Machiavellian insincere, unctuous way, but they understand when to turn it on and to turn it off. So what might be appropriate for the playground, the football pitch, the meeting your buddies in a cafe might not be appropriate if you're going for a job interview or if you're having a discussion with the King of England or the President of the UAE. You know what I mean? You have to be able to adapt. I think what I've found as I've matured is increasing comfort in who I am. I heard Busta Rhymes say this the other day, so I'm going to link it back to your original question. So I think as a younger rapper, often you feel you have something to prove because it's quite a gladiatorial sport. We're obviously talking about UFC beforehand, and the younger me was very combative. So I've been in many a battle rap, in many a rap battle, and I've done that even in the United States, which is quite the experience. Like in Philadelphia, which is a serious city. Anyone who knows Philly is serious, but I mean, amazing art scene there as well. But as you become more mature, more experienced, more content, more settled, more inner peace, more happy, then you're comfortable with who you are and you have less proof. You know, like how we were talking about, we came on there about wearing the muscle tees. Yeah. And I was like, bro, I can tell you're in excellent shape. You know, I mean, you got nothing to prove. You look great. You know what I mean? And maybe the younger iteration of oneself might be like, no, I have to wear the muscle tees.
It will be a string vest, bro. Like I was going to carnival all the time, bro.
Just take the vest off, right? So I think the younger me would probably have, I don't want to say tried hard, but would have been more conscious about, right, I'm around rappers, I'm going to talk in a certain way. But what I've experienced is I actually had a time away from rap. So that made me reevaluate the nature of those relationships. And it was a moment of clarity in I understood how transactional and utilitarian many relationships are. So if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. So a lot of guys who I thought maybe were friends were not as devoted in the way that I was, you know what I mean? I have a lyric where I say, you move transactional, I move brotherly, you know what I mean? So I think when I returned to making music, I was doing other artistic things in the meantime. Then I'm like, right, I was now in my late 20s. So I'm more comfortable who I am. This is what you get. I'm from a particular socioeconomic background. I have studied to PhD level. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. That's not having dignity and self-respect. And it's, you know, it doesn't do anyone any benefits, really. Like, people value people who are authentic and real. So yeah, I talk the way I do, and yeah, I get mad love and respect, man. And it's funny, and I was saying this to Adam on the way down. Big up Adam over there.
Shout out, Tribesman Beats.
Yeah, we're gonna get him on the mic at some point. The very elusive quality I was searching for, the end goal as a younger rapper, which is basically respect and admiration, I now get without even trying. So it's a beautiful thing. But yeah, that's sort of an insight into the connection between language, rap, and who I am.
No, I understand that totally. Like, I don't know if Adam told you, but like Dylan, I spit hot fire. I used to be very into, I mean, we all were, but into the rap game when I was younger. And I was very good. And I'll say that for myself. I don't care if anyone else says it or not, but I was very good. But I never wanted to be a rapper.
Really interesting.
I only started rapping because the people around me were into rapping.
Right.
And where I am the type of person that will pick anything up and be very good at it very quick, I've always had that skill. So I was like, okay, for me to gain respect from these guys, I need to show them how I can put lyrics together. But I always had this thing in my head where I was like, I don't want to be a part. Like, I enjoyed it. I loved music. I loved freestyling. I loved putting lyrics together. I loved people calling me up later and going, I just realized what you said. An hour later. Do you know what I mean? But there was something always missing inside me where it was like, I don't want to continue the lifestyle that comes with it.
Yeah, sure.
Do you know what I mean? And I would be out there with my friends on the road doing stupid shit. But I was like, this isn't really me. Yeah, I love the poetry behind it, the intelligence that comes with it. I mean, there's a lot of rappers that just don't think and just open their mouth and just say whatever. But those people who really know how to string, you know, like similes and syllables and all these things together, you're not a stupid person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I always remember thinking, I just don't want it enough. Like I can do this very well. And if I stuck to it, I'm sure I would have got to wherever I wanted to get to. But there was always that bit inside me going, I'm kind of faking this.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I love hip hop, but I don't want to be beefing with people for no reason just because they're from a different area, rapping a different way or all that stuff. So then I was like, nah, forget about all this shit. I can't deal with it. One thing, I want to go back to code switching because I find it very relevant to me. I've noticed, and now that you've said it, I've been code switching my whole life.
Right.
And I want to know, is that a fight or flight thing?
Interesting question.
Where you learn how to be like that because you know you can be safe in any environment because you understand the environment.
Gotcha.
And you understand how to code switch to blend into that environment without being, especially in environments where you just got into it and do you know what I mean? So I've traveled around the world. I've been everywhere. You know, I speak many languages. You know, if I'm in Brazil, you know, I'll be speaking to them in their way. And one thing that I find very interesting, the AJ who's speaking English, the AJ who's speaking Spanish, the AJ who's speaking Portuguese, the AJ who's speaking Arabic, they're completely different people.
Oh, really?
The mannerisms are different. The way I move my face is different. The jokes I say is different. It's not the same person just speaking a different language.
That's fascinating.
It's a whole different person. And I noticed it around people around me. When I'd see my mum speaking Arabic in the house, she'd act a certain way. When I'd see her trying to show off her English in the street to her English friends, she had a different character. And I feel is there a connection there where when you change language, you're a different soul or you're a different person completely? Because the jokes I would say in Egyptian to my Egyptian friends, they're completely different. My mannerisms, the way I talk, I know what they find funny. So I switch into that character but I'm not meaning to. I'm not trying to be a character for that thing. I just know that this is who I am when I'm speaking Arabic, and this is who I am when I'm speaking English. So what's the relevance there linguistically when it comes to that?
I think that's PhD number 2.
Sorry, that was about 16 questions in one.
No, it's brilliant. I think, and do you know what? That's one of the beautiful things about these discussions, and you've inadvertently described the nature of a thesis in that it starts with a question. So you have something that puzzles you, intrigues you, and then you research it. And that research, what I love about doing a PhD was that it's a quest for truth. And that's probably a much used term and probably quite a loaded term as well. But at its heart, there's a purity, almost a spiritual and intellectual purity with that level of academia. It's also an industry which I didn't realize until I started doing my PhD. And I'm going to link this back to even down to some of the petty beefs between different scholars, and also like almost the passive aggressive nature of their battle. We talk about polite rap battles. You look at some of the battles that are taking place in academic periodicals. It's fascinating. And it was such a novel to me, like, wow. Because at times it sort of veers into personal territory. And I remember speaking to one of my supervisors, is this like allowed? Is this the decorum of scholarship? And they're like, well, not really. But so there's egos and power and privilege there, like in any industry. But at its heart, with academia and scholarship, is this quest for truth and using a set of empirical tools, a scientific method, a methodology to find out truth. And even then, often there's a caution when articulating that truth. Like you can't say, bro, it's black and white, this is a clear cut. It's also, it's very likely that there are multiverses. Anyway, I'm just using a topical sort of astrophysics.
It's a nice segue. We're going into that later. So
yeah,
it's nice that you said.
That's I love cosmology and astrophysics. So I think what you have described there, I'm sure there is probably a lot of literature about it, probably within the field of sociolinguistics and psychology, I've only looked at it in passing, so it would be disingenuous of me to be able to say I have enough knowledge to answer. But maybe me and you can team up after and like
get it done, bro.
We could even just go on Google Scholar and like type something in, like find some abstracts from different like journals and see what the research is. But yeah, I love it. I love
that, Adam?
language.
Get Googling, mate.
Yeah.
Get Googling. No, but so Jibber with Jabber.
Yeah.
Is its own linguistics, right? So the term jibber jabber, someone who talks a lot, whether it's a lot of shit or whether it's a lot of whatever.
Yeah.
So I've always been fascinated with languages and just even con artists.
Right.
Just the way that they can convince some, like,
you're not trying to convince me.
No. Just, you know how people can use language in a way to either get them in or out of any situation, sometimes incredible situations. So I've always been fascinated with that. And also, like, for example, if you're going to Japan or to anywhere in the world on a holiday, there's two ways you can go there. One way, you could just go the way you are.
Yep.
Another way is you can learn 10 words and 5 phrases from that native language.
Yeah, sure.
How you will be treated by the native person, whether you're that person who's like, oh, I'm on holiday, give me a beer or whatever, and somebody who goes there, greets them in their language, says their few couple of words. People love that.
Yeah, 100%.
They love the fact that somebody's taken time to kind of learn a bit of their thing.
Definitely.
And again, with that whole code switching thing that just makes me laugh is, have you ever been stopped by a foreigner asking for directions and noticed that your voice goes, okay, go to the light and take 2 left, and then after that, you know what I mean? And you kind of change, without even subconsciously change your language. Why do we do that?
That's interesting, isn't it? The human mind is just so fascinating. And I think the more you study, the more you realize how little we actually know. And it should humble you. But as I said, even in academia, there can be internal politics and battles there. So I think for me, because I've been fortunate to traverse numerous different scenes and subcultures, be it like the hip hop scene, be it the spoken word scene, short filmmaking, academia. I've even done some dance, bro, when I was younger. Visual arts. Every culture and subculture has its own set of tacit laws, unwritten rules. Argot, which is speech. I'm taking that from Subculture, The Meaning of Style, which is a book written by an academic called Dick Hebdige. And it was written in the late 70s, and it was looking at the punk movement and the Teddy Boys and rock and rollers. But it identified common threads between different youth movements. And one of the circumstances that occurred a lot was this notion of there being an underground scene that over time infiltrates the mainstream, then gets adopted by the mainstream, and then is deemed to be tainted from its original pristine source by the adherents and zealous acolytes of the original movement. So it's really fascinating. So for me, I try and have this almost transcendental observer. In academia, it's called the emic and etic view, and I can never remember which is which, but I think it's the emic view is the one where you're within the subculture, and the etic view is where you're looking from above. But, there's a term that I might have got that wrong, so that's one for the fact check. So, Adam, could you check that, emic and etic view, and then correct me if I'm wrong. There, I'm trying to see more. Emic, E-M-I-C, etic, E-T-I-C. I'm trying to seem smarter than I actually am. This notion of objectivity in academia, you say you have disciplined subjectivity. So you can never claim to be the sole guarantor of truth. You're trying as best as you can to get close to that objective truth, but you're bringing your own baggage and biases, which you have to acknowledge in your writing as well. And that links back to what I was saying earlier about, in its purest form, a PhD is this quest for truth, where you hold yourself to account as well, where you're like, well, I'm trying to find out this idea, trying to prove it or disprove it. I might be wrong. And I might be bringing these incorrect notions in myself. So I have to, what can I do to mitigate against them? So I love it, man. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again one day.
Let's do it, bro. Let's do it after this.
Yeah, yeah.
Adam's gonna take us to a
Team
restaurant
effort.
that's gonna make us sleep straight after. Look at the way he's looking at me. I refuse to eat with Adam
Really?
ever again. Yeah. So basically, every time he takes me to eat, I sleep for 3 days after because I don't know where he takes me and where he finds these restaurants, but literally like food coma straight away as soon as I leave. Let's take it back. First track, because I took
We
it on a
mentioned
tangent.
that, and we had no time, and I'd thought about it. Run DMC Walk This Way,
Ooh.
which was a collaboration with the rock group Aerosmith.
It was
For the younger members of the audience.
It brought the two worlds together, and it was something that happened at a time where it needed to be done.
Yes. Iconic video.
The banging on the wall.
Yeah,
I remember it. Amazing.
And as a young one, when I saw that video, I was always rooting for Run DMC because it's sort of like this almost battle of the bands. And I was like, I'm rooting for the guys with like the Kangol hats and the gazelle shades and the leathers. But yeah, it was an amazing collaboration. And on a note of trivia, I don't think he produced that track, but he definitely released it because it was on Def Jam Records. I had the great fortune, and I have a lot of synchronicity, bro. It's crazy, like just chance encounters or divine decree. But I met Rick Rubin outside my house in September last year.
Really?
Yeah.
What was you doing there?
Well, I end up bumping into a lot of people. Anyone that knows me knows I have a habit of meeting people anywhere in the UK and beyond, and just big names or people I've not seen yet. I just bump into people a lot of the time. I think it's to do with the fact of a particular recording studio being in close proximity. I won't say which one because that might give it away, but a well-known recording studio being in close proximity to my domus, shall we say.
I know which one.
So maybe he was there, maybe he wasn't, but I'd gone on a milk run to Sainsbury's that morning. Walking back, I see a gentleman with a flowing mane of white hair and an even longer flowing white beard. I'm like, right, it looks like Rick Rubin. I'm like, oh, it is Rick Rubin. So yeah, I met the guy that was the architect of that release many years later. So that's a nice moment of full circle synchronicity. Oh, I didn't mention, I should have mentioned it to him at the time. That was like my first sort of influential rap tune.
What about that track, and what did that spark off from there?
So I think what it sparked was an infatuation with the rebel sound of hip hop culture and that contrarian spirit that, whether it's nature or nurture, is inside me. It's probably a bit of both. Again, that's a PhD in itself, but I think I've inherited some of my dad's contrarian spirit. Big up Pops every time. So yeah, it's a sonic sedition, rap music. Obviously, you could have big discussions about, well, as it became more mainstream and there's a corporate influence, but that's probably a discussion for another time. But that video, I think, encapsulates the kinetic energy, not just of rap, but rock as well. And as you say, bringing two worlds together in a beautiful way. I was hooked from the style, from the bars, from the catchy hook. Loved it. But my entry point into hip hop culture wasn't rap, it was breakdancing.
Okay. B-boying or breakdancing?
Breakdancing. And I actually studied for a bit in a very informal manner at Leeds College of Music or Dance, something like that. It was a long time ago, so I can't remember the exact name of the location. So I did that. And also me and my buddy used to model ourselves on Kid and Play.
Nice.
House Party.
Yeah.
So we replicate the moves.
You did the leg hook.
Yeah. The leg hook. And then the jump over.
Yeah.
And sometimes you didn't like calculate the distance, right? You end up like getting dashed in the head. So we'd always like bust that one at youth club. But I came to rap quite late. So I was in my late teens when I started rapping. So even though I'd been listening to the music from young, from early, I didn't really start rapping until I was 18, 19. And it was a chance, although maybe, like I was saying before, synchronicity, divine decree. I was in a club in Leeds and they had an open mic there. My buddy was like, yeah, you should get on and spit. I you think? He's like, yeah. And I got on and I ripped it and like people were feeling it. And I loved the attention basically. Yeah. And my guy was like, yeah, people were feeling you, man. So I was hooked from there on. And I love performing. even now in the UAE, I came here on Sunday. Adam, big up Adam again, every time hollered at me a couple of days before I was due. I was saying there's, an event going off in Abu Dhabi on Sunday. Manarat, Sadia, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Forgive my pronunciation. Beautiful, beautiful. Have you been there, bro?
Yeah, of course.
Lovely, lovely venue, art gallery, museum. They've got little basketball nets outside, gardens. The juice bar was brutal, not brutal as in, but anyway.
Yeah.
Wordplay there. Yeah. I didn't come up with it. So yeah, literally touchdown 7:30. I'd had about 4 hours sleep, cleared customs, got baggage by 8:30, pulled up to the hotel. Now, didn't even go to the hotel, just dropped the stuff off, went straight to the venue, got lost inside there. So literally I got into the auditorium about 10 minutes before the whole event was meant to finish. And then literally I hear my names. I literally went up and shelled it, bro.
Nice.
But still to this day, I love performing. Whether it's doing straight up rap shows, I've been doing a lot more spoken word performances as well. For me, there's a lot of overlap between the two. As someone once said, rap, rhythmic African poetry or rhythm and poetry. So it's an oratorical art form that has a long tradition. But it's a vibe, bro. Being able to perform different countries, even just in the UK, going to different cities, but there's something special about going to different countries. So I've performed, as I said earlier, in America, Philadelphia. That was more in a battle flex, which was crazy, going to some serious places and getting into some battles there. But I performed Elysée Montmartre in France, Paris, immortalized in the Roots You Got Me, where they say, what is that? A show in Paris at Elysée Montmartre, stepped off stage, grabbed a piece of my heart. So there I segued from Philly to Paris, which was with Nena Cherry, who was like a mentor for me in my younger years. So big up Nena every time. One of the best people I've met in the music industry. Incredible woman with just the sweetest, kindest heart. Performed in Paris. I performed in Switzerland. Again, that was with Nena as well, like ski festivals there. Performed in Scandinavia, Malaysia. So yeah, it's been an adventure. And just linking it back to your discussion on code switching earlier, I think as an artist, as you mature and build up your experience, you develop a spidey sense, a tingling of the spine that you can read your audience, an emotional intelligence. So you understand what would work with this demographic, with this crowd, with this age range, with this set of people who speak this language, and what might not. So it's about having that alertness, having the humility, to present yourself, be respectful of the cultures and the countries that you're visiting, and building that connection and bond with your audience. And I think that starts as well by being a good listener, which you're an exceptional listener, I have to say. So
I appreciate that.
yeah, definitely.
That's how you learn, man, is by listening. Yeah.
Exactly. But listening has the illusion of being a passive activity, when I think it's actually harder.
It's harder,
to listen than it is tough, because for most people, listening is the pause in between the discussion where you're formulating your response or retort. So yeah, being able to just observe and listen and study your audience and what's appropriate for this. I mean, bro, come on. Before we came out, I said, is there anything that wouldn't be appropriate? Like, I'm a guest in this country. I want to be mindful, respectful. One of the, legendary Arab hospitality, bro, is just world renowned. You know what I mean? So even just as soon as I touched down at Manarat, just the audience was incredible. You know what I mean? Such a warm welcome, so respectful, so receptive, and so many people coming up after wanting to talk and just show their appreciation and love. So yeah, it's lovely, man. So I think that's one thing I've developed over the years, is being able to read, and not in a calculated manner where you're trying to get one over people.
But it's important though. I mean, I saw something the other day. It was this band, I can't remember the name. Maybe Adam will Google it for us, or maybe he's still asleep because he still hasn't found Tacit and
Emikinetic.
Emikinetic.
Oh, you found it?
You found it?
What was
Well,
it?
tell us then.
What was it?
1 minute. We'll get your mic on. Is the mic on? Make sure, yeah.
Yeah, I found it. Okay. Emic approach is an insider's perspective which looks at the beliefs, values, and practices of a particular culture from the perspective of the people who live within the culture.
Yes.
This approach aims to understand the cultural meaning and significance of a particular behavior of practice as it's understood by the people who engage in it.
Exactly what I was thinking.
The ethic approach, on the other hand, is an outsider's perspective, which looks at the culture from the perspective of an outside observer or researcher. The approach tends to focus on the observable behaviors and practices of a culture, aims to understand them in terms of their functional or evolutionary significance. It often involves the use of standardized measures and frameworks to compare different cultures, and may involve the use of concepts and theories from other disciplines such as psychology or sociology.
There you go, you're all right.
So I did remember something from the PhD.
To go back to something that you said before, do you think that there can be a sociological debate with music when it comes to nature or nurture? Because me personally, I think there's certain things in life where nature and nurture don't apply.
Okay,
and I think music is one of them. Love is one of them. Because I think there's some things that are embedded in our DNA deep that you can't debate that.
So are you saying music is inherent, intrinsic to our being? It's something
so there's
built
music,
into us.
There's music and sound all over nature. When it rains, when wind blows through a leaf of grass, gives you that whistle. When things fall, they thump. Tribes all have ways of talking, like some tribes that have a very melodic way of speaking. I think that it was inevitable that music was going to be around in one way or another. I think naturally, I don't think we had to develop that through being taught. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Hey, man. Do you know that's probably a PhD at SOAS?
Right?
Adam, can you see that? SOAS, if their musicology department has got anything on that sort of vibe. I honestly don't know. I actually had a poem that I wrote years ago, which you have sort of encapsulated with your descriptions there, where I was looking for the music in life outside of, say, musical instruments or a music studio production. But as you said, the sounds of nature, or it could be a baby cooing or the wind blowing or bird song.
You know the mountains in Sudan? There are a certain set of mountains in Sudan. When the wind blows through them, each mountain and cave makes a different melodic sound, and it sounds like an instrument.
Wow, that's deep. I don't know. I suspect some learned individuals who are far smarter than myself have done some research on this already.
But what do you think, personally? Because I know you come from sometimes the academic mind clicks in and you go, I don't want anyone to watch this and think I'm saying something. But just from a human conversation, just between you and me and anyone else that's watching through.
I honestly don't know. That's my honest answer. And it's not me trying to sidestep it. My intuitive response would be yes. But again, as soon as I've matured, I've become more, not reticent, but more considered in my decision making and how I perceive truth or truths rather. I think there's definitely, I think what I would want to, I'm going to throw it back now. What would we define as music? So I think I would want to see how we would classify that first before I could say if it's something that is inherent in its appreciation. There is an inherent appreciation of sound and sound in certain configurations within human beings.
Okay, let's put it.
My intuitive response would be yes, but
yes, it is nurture. Or yes,
it's something intuitive, but like I said, I'm putting this with the caveat. I think I would want to put it to.
Okay, put it this way. If I gave you a microphone and told you go out for the day, record some natural sounds and bring it back to Adam, and then I said to Adam, from these sounds, I want you to make a beat. Do you think he can make a beat?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, I believe in that guy. I believe in you, Adam. Sorry, it's probably a bit loud for the mic.
I found something now.
But that doesn't that say that music is there in nature?
I don't know. So I'm going to come again with something that I learned when I was doing my MA, which was in the blues.
Yeah.
But that's an acronym. It's
You're
not as
fighting with the light. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. That's the third light you've been punching up, bro. What have they done to you, man?
We had music there, the sound of
see?
the light swaying.
Yes. Does he need his mic a bit closer? Okay, cool.
We're sounding good.
Yeah.
It's very topical at the moment. There is a famous hypothesis called the Shapiro-Whorf hypothesis, I believe it's called. And it's touching upon something not too dissimilar to what you said. And again, we can do the fact check and just make sure that my memory has not served me incorrectly, because this was a while ago when I did my MA. So again, I don't want to be misrepresenting decades of academic research in a way which is untrue. But there was this notion that unless you possess vocabulary, you cannot express certain concepts. So I think the way to articulate it would be the epistemology precedes the ontology.
Doesn't sign language debunk that instantly?
Well,
or do you need the vocabulary to know the signs for that?
I think there was this intuitive idea that if you don't know the words to say what a polar bear is, you don't understand that that's a polar bear. But then there was further research down along the line which sort of debunked it. And that's again
if I said
yeah, exactly. We can be all academic about this and haughty when you've got
yeah, exactly.
On that note, I climbed a place called Bear Mountain in Penn State in the United States many, many years ago. This was when I was in Philly. So we went out to Penn State to the uni, and there was a beautiful, and I mean, it was amazing as well in that there's a lot less light pollution. So you get to see the stars in a way that for most of us, we're sort of cosmology illiterate.
I get what you're saying.
In a way that the ancients weren't, because they got to
Have you been to Australia?
I haven't. Did you get to? Yeah. Anyway, so I was at this place called Bear Mountain. Beautiful, beautiful scenery. Climbed it up and climbed back down. And then we're sort of in this plateau next to it. And I started... I was thinking, what is that noise and stuff? Then, and it's getting closer. And I was like saying to him, like, guys, is that what I think it is? He's like, yeah, why do you think it's called Bear Mountain? And obviously I'm from the UK. They don't really have bears right around. Yeah. And it was like, getting really, I was like, bro, we just bailed out.
You're lucky it wasn't that cocaine bear that was around me.
I don't know what sort of bear it was, but I did not want to stick around to find out what it had been consuming, because it sounded like it wanted to eat more.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are great questions, Brian. Like I say, when I respond to them, it's not me trying to be shy away from certain topics. It's me just trying to be sincere. And I think what I've taken from academia and just all the many experiences I've had in life is to be comfortable with saying I don't know. And I think the younger me would have been a lot more vehement in arguing and literally arguing certain points, whereas now I'm very content and at peace, and I know what my morals are, what my ethics, what my values are, and I'm trying to spread love to everyone, respect for everyone, empower people as much as I can, even if it's in a few small centimeters or meters within my community, you know what I mean? If it's just by putting a smile on someone's face. But I have no qualms in saying I'm not sure about this, but I love the discussion. I love these topics. And like I say, all the points you're raising have been and will be valid avenues of research at a very high academic level. So they're ideas that people take very seriously. And you're putting them out there, and they're great questions. So I think that PhD awaits you, bro.
I told you my freestyling was good.
It's not freestyling, bro. You're on the ball, man. You're on the ball.
Okay. How did acceptance work for you, for your peers on both sides? So you have your academic peers that you're telling you're a rapper, and you have your rapping peers who you're telling, actually, I'm doing my PhD.
Yeah.
How does that work on both sides?
That's great, bro. That's great. I think the younger me, again, was much more eager for acceptance than the more mature me. Obviously, we're still in our mid-20s here, so we still have much time to develop and grow. But I think entering that gladiatorial underground hip-hop scene full of young men who are also finding themselves in life, are not fully formed, I mean, maybe have come from different backgrounds, have dealt with different traumas, for instance, then it was a lot more combative and caustic. What's been interesting is that when I took that sort of step away from the hip-hop scene, I was still doing a lot of creative stuff, I just wasn't making music. When I returned to it, I found many of those same guys who in their teens or early 20s were quite confrontational, had matured into really lovely guys. And I struck up friendships with guys who I hadn't really been close friends with, or didn't expect to be close friends with, but they've grown into really well-rounded human beings. And then there's also people who you might have been close with who you drift apart for whatever. I mean, it's never, I'm not like a guy on beef or anything like that. But you just go your separate ways and whatnot. And obviously, you wish everyone well. There's no ill will or hard feelings. You want good for everyone. So that sense of acceptance, I think, because I'm comfortable in who I am, I'm not really looking for it. Obviously, we're not robots at the end of the day. We all like praise, validation, affirmation. You know, we like the nice warm feeling it brings. But I think just being true to yourself, people appreciate that. And I've, known and met guys who are very serious, street dudes who show me a lot of love because I'm not trying to be something I'm not. I can't pretend to be something I'm not.
What about the other side, though, the academic side?
That's very interesting. I think there's a novelty factor there in that when I've been in those spaces and people find out you're a musician and a creative, there's a lot more, oh yeah, go do as a rap then, that sort of thing. And like, I'm not someone that really raps on the spot, sorry. So for them, in their world, it's probably an exciting thing because you're not going to really meet those sort of extrovert, gregarious, creative types who are living quite an adventurous lifestyle. So there's a novelty factor to it. What's interesting, I was telling Adam this on the way down, I did quite a lot of work with Cambridge University. So this was probably 2014 to 2016. So I would be going back and forth. I was taking part in a research program there. This wasn't for my PhD. This was something separate. So, I mean, Cambridge, like the apex predator, the ecosystem of that world. It's literally the zenith of academia. So obviously just the budgets they're dealing with are huge and, they really look after you there. And there was one guy I met there who was working in academia and doing some really interesting research, who had actually been an A&R for a record label, and he was basically managing So Solid Crew on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
So I was like, bro, that's a mad trajectory. Yeah. And what's interesting, he was saying they were very organized and disciplined, which in many ways makes sense when you.
It does make sense when you think about it. Yeah.
Crew of that amount of artists, then you're going to have to be able to mobilize and be professional and whatnot. So it's very interesting hearing his experiences from the more, not necessarily the corporate side, but the managerial side of the music industry. Where I'm from the artist side, I still have to do a certain amount of management and business because I've always been independent. But from someone who was not artistically inclined at all, but was strictly on the managerial side. So it's very, very insightful hearing from him. And again, it's that whole thing, I think, of just being able to go to different worlds, different communities, different subcultures, create bonds with people, support them, connect with them, work towards a common goal. And yeah, as you were saying, just have respect for people and try and understand them, try and get into their shoes and their brains, like why they believe what they believe. Might be very different to you. You might disagree with it, but it could just be that they believe these things, not because they're evil people or they're ignorant. It might be a genuine, sincere belief. And I think that's one of the things I've learned the most on my journey, just being in different spaces and very, very different worlds, is being around people who would probably never normally meet and sort of having the privilege to see, right, these people have this sort of set of values and beliefs, which is very different to these guys, but they're actually decent people on both sides. And like, what can we do to bring people together? And obviously no one's ever going to agree on everything, but as we were saying, it's listening, being able to have these conversations and being able to sort of listen without trying to say, but like, all right, let me just sit back and listen and soak this in, and maybe gently sort of say, well, maybe you could consider this. But
I think a lot of it has to, just like your story, has to come with growth and maturity.
Yeah,
because look,
totally,
in
man.
every tribe around the world, in every corner of the world you go to the elders to sort stuff out.
Oh yeah.
You don't sort stuff out between the youngsters, you know what I mean? So you have to go to the chief or the elder who obviously has been through it, who's seen it all. And by the time he gets to that age, he's like, okay, I can kind of show you how to fix this, right?
Yeah.
So the J Dilla sample?
Let me take a sip of water.
Yeah, take a sip of water because you saw Jay Dilla, and I just want to know if I got this right. Gave him a CD.
I've never met Dilla.
You never met Dilla? You gave somebody a CD, right?
So the interesting thing about this is I think I had already taken a step back from music when this happened.
Okay.
I think, don't quote me 100% there. So I'm not 100%. I think the connection, the passing on of the music was made whilst I was still in the game. But when the music was released that I was sampled on, that was out when I was taking a hiatus. So I didn't focus on it too much at the time. And then later I was like, I was sampled by Dilla.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How sick.
But I think what happened was he was playing at a venue in London, and a fellow artist and business partner of mine had taken down a number of records that our label and our colleagues had made and left them in the venue for Dilla. And I think he had to leave before he had a chance to meet Dilla. But I think he went back to the venue later on and then found the records had gone.
Okay.
So he inferred that Dilla had helped himself and absconded. We don't mind. Yeah. It's all good. Had absconded with the records. And then a few years down the line, the vocals. So the song of mine that was sampled is called Silent Mobius, which is a reference actually to a early 90s manga. So you have a Mobius strip, which is this perfect infinity loop. So the play off that. And the producer, Harry Love, who is obviously from West London.
I know Harry Love. Went to school with Harry.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. We were talking about that particular school before we came on there. Anyway, he encouraged me to do some vocal ad-libs before the start of the track. And it's funny because I don't do ad-libs anymore, like at the start tracks, but for that one I did do it. And we'd also included the a cappella of the track on the pressing of the in the days of mass pressing of vinyl. And so it meant there was something there that could be sampled quite easily. And lo and behold, my vocals started popping up on a few of songs produced by Dilla. So that has been one of my claim to fame as an artist that, I can put on my epitaph. Again, I keep mentioning that, and we did our own mini podcast on the way down. But I'd say if you told me at the start of my creative journey that, I'd be sampled by Dilla, or I get love from Kylie Minogue.
Yeah, what? Tell me about that. That was
so the Kylie Minogue one, that was for a song called "Move Now," which produced by a gentleman called Mark B, who unfortunately has passed away since. And I'm going to do a lot of full circle moments here. So I was at Mark's flat in West London, and we were going through like samples to try and pick out something. And we were there for ages. And then he put something on. It was a Bollywood track. I was like, that's the one. He's like, bro, you can write this bit. I was like, bro, I couldn't rhyme to anything and bring it on. So he looped it up, and the song was Move Now. It was engineered by a guy, I forget his name, but he engineered Rat Rapping by Roland Rat and Kevin the Gerbil, which I think was the first UK rap #1. So obviously at the moment, Central C, Dave have had like the longest.
All the stuff that British hip hop went through, and it was Roland Rat that ended up getting #1, man.
So he was the pioneer, this rodent, and his accomplice who had the first UK rap #1 years before, obviously, the huge explosion in UK rap now. So it was engineered by this guy who ironically had done a lot of Bollywood engineering as well. But the song had a sample of Asher Bosel, who's immortalized on Brimful of Asher on a 45, which was Corner Shop, remixed by Norman Cook, right? And we had to give away a certain amount of the royalties there as well to, the sample was cleared to the publishing, which actually it wasn't going to Asher Bosel, it was a publishing company that owned it. And somehow it got on Kylie Minogue's radar, and she was quite euphoric about the tune, praising it. And again, this is an interesting thing. I took that hiatus from the music game. So whilst I was on that hiatus, Mark actually sent me like a remix someone from Kylie Minogue's camp had done of the song. So some dude rapping over the beat. And there was even talk of me going on tour with Kylie Minogue.
Wow.
But at that moment, I was just like, no.
Yeah.
I was just out of the game at that point. So yeah, Dilla and Kylie, it's quite the combination.
Did you get any royalties from the Dilla?
Nope, but bro,
Under 8 seconds, right?
bro, just to say,
Yeah.
do you know, it's so deep, right? Because this is the beauty of it. Like doing what I do, I get to meet so many amazing creators. So in October last year, a friend of mine called Shaolin, who's an amazing soul singer from Virginia Beach, USA. She did her first ever London show. And I've been following her music for a couple of years. I actually had been inadvertently signposted to it via Pusha T. Not that I know Pusha, although Harry Love was tour DJ for Clips when they were in the UK, right? So again, it's just it's not even 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
It's like 1 or 2. So I've been following her music for a couple of years and reached out to her manager in like March last year and like befriended him. And he was like, yeah, we're coming in autumn. I was like, cool. When you're over, hit me up. I'll look after you guys and stuff. So like autumn last year, I was like, yo, you guys still coming? He's like, yeah. So I was right. So I was helping them out, like interviews, podcasts, all this sort of stuff. So it's just lovely to meet Shao in the flesh, someone whose music I've been listening to for years, like my favorite singer out there at the moment. Like I say, she's a protege of Pusha T. She's now signed to Def Jam. Nice. Like crazy, just hearing all her stuff. Like she's worked with Pharrell. Her dad was best friends with Pharrell at high school. You know what I mean? But it's just crazy because I was chatting to her. She's got a couple of managers and we were out one evening and stuff. I was like, oh, yeah, I got sampled by Dilla. And like literally the next day, the whole crew were like, yo, I walked in the street. She's like, yo, Tommy, I heard you were sampled by Dilla. I was like, yeah. But it's crazy because, you know, I've just seen her work and, you know, she's an absolute protege, just absolute genius. And it's rare I use that word. And I ended up recording with her, which again was like a dream come true. It's amazing where we're at now in terms of making music that through technology, social media, globalization, there's a space-time compression. So it is feasible that I can be on the phone and have a conversation, a video call with someone on the other side of the globe, or I can, you know, befriend an artist in another country and then
we record a track without even meeting them or even speaking to them.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So stuff like that for me, and you know, whether the tracks get released or not, it's just like it's a special moment. Like we got to create something, and there's a bond thereafter. You know what I mean? So like even small things like that are just special to me. Or even just bringing younger artists through. Like I work a lot with singers. I don't work with many rappers. I work a lot with singers, and I mentor a lot of younger singers. So just talent scouting basically, or, you know, searching for the next
gardening.
You know what I mean? Just someone who's just gonna like blow your mind. And often it's on social media. Another good story on that front, check this out. I think like you said, I'm quite outgoing and whatnot. So I was at Sadler's Wells, which is like a theatre venue in North London for those that watch and maybe don't know. And there's a legend from the UK scene called John ZD who, again, he's someone who has that rap background, hip hop background, but just has explored it through theatre, dance, poetry, etc. Really lovely gentleman. So I've seen some performances that he'd curated, and I ended up sat next to a young lady and just got chatting like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And then she mentioned, "Oh, I have a sister who's a singer." I was like, "All right, cool." I was like, "I love her." She's like, "Oh, she's called Glory Nade. She's amazing. Check her out." So I checked her out, and then through Glory Nade, I saw this singer called Anissa Marie. Checked out her work. Recorded with Glory Nade. Her name means glory to God, which is beautiful. Amazing singer. She's worked with Big Nasty as well. Recorded with Anissa as well. Then one time I was at the V&A, like this time last year for a festival. Anissa's there with another singer called Nayota. I recorded with her in March this year, and it's all through me just being randomly being sat next to a young lady at a theatre show that I decided at the last moment to go to. I ended up recording with 3 different singers who are all very talented in their own way. So, yeah, I love it, man. I love it. You know, even small things like that bring me just as much excitement as, say, being sampled by Dilla.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it all.
And it's also like creating the next generation
Exactly.
as well, right?
I hope so, because I think one of the things that my particular generation of rappers lacked were the elders that you mentioned, the elder statesmen who could bring you through. And it's not just their fault. There wasn't much of an infrastructure to support, whereas now there's a fully fledged industry for rappers from the UK. And, I would like to give the support that I didn't necessarily receive as a younger artist. And I don't do it in a calculated, Machiavellian, strategic manner. It's like I like to give back and support. So
It's the same thing, but look, when you become a parent, the first thing that you do is look at what you feel like you lacked from your parents, not in a negative way.
No.
But in just how can I improve the next generation, right? So it's the same kind of thing. So it just shows that you care in that kind of
sure.
It's more of a parental thing where I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did, or I didn't want you to walk into the same walls that I did, where I felt like I wasn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, little did I know, there was a door just 3 meters to the left of that wall, and no one showed me.
Yeah.
But I know there's a door there, so I'm just going to show you that there's a door there, so you don't walk into the wall, kind of thing.
Yeah.
A few things I want to get in, make sure I get in, because I know we've been on for a while, and I don't want Marwan to hate me for doing another.
You could never
another 4-hour episode. So the evolution of your music, something I noticed, it's completely changed. As you said, you've completely changed.
Yeah.
The old stuff, very English, very British. The new stuff, I would say there's still British stuff. Because one thing I noticed in one of the songs I heard, there was a remnants of Jamiroquai in it.
Oh, bro, I'll happily take that, Russ.
Like in the chorus.
Yeah.
I think it was Summertime.
Yeah.
Did you notice that, or do you now hear it when it's been mentioned?
I can completely hear it, and I have to be very transparent on this front. I didn't write that chorus, so 95% of the time, I write all the choruses that I get the singers performing on. Obviously, they'll bring their own inflections and cadence, whatnot, but I'll be like, right, this is the hook. And I'm approaching it with the mindset, I want to be able to perform this live and have the audience sing it back. And if you listen to the earlier stuff, and a lot of more underground rap, it's not necessarily... I have quite a pop sensibility, even though I'm probably still deemed like an underground artist. I have like a pop sensibility when I write my stuff, so I want it to be able to stick in people's heads. I want to put a positive message out there, but I want people to have a catchy chorus and whatnot. So the chorus on that particular song was written by the featured artist on it, Matthew, who's amazing singer, lovely Bajan British performer. And that was one of the rare instances where I just couldn't think of a hook. I was like, Matt, can you write something for that? And ironically, that was the first time I'd met him in person as well. Okay. So just as you've been saying, you can record tracks with someone across the other side of the world. Yeah. We'd done 1 or 2 tracks before, and I think it was during the pandemic. So he'd sent me the stems and stuff, but we not actually met in the flesh. So it's lovely to meet him, but he's such a lovely guy. And he does a lot of sort of live, even busking, which I think, I'm from a battle rap background, but to me, I wouldn't have the courage to busk in the streets. So I admire anyone that has that level of audacity and courage.
It's a stand-up comedy of the music world.
Yeah. So brave to do it, man. And real test of your skills and patience and grit and resilience. So on that particular track, that was his handiwork. Ironically as well, the producer of that track is a gentleman called Configure, who also has a PhD. So we are officially, I think, the one for the Guinness Book of Records, the first rapper-producer combo who have a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
He did Arrested Development's last couple of albums as well. So I think I always wanted to make the music that I'm making now, which is a much more soulful rap sound.
Very soulful, yeah.
But when I was younger, I just didn't really have the means to do it. It was a lot harder getting into the studio then. I think I was around a lot more underground rappers with more traditional sort of classic hip hop, and there's nothing wrong with that sound. But for me, my sort of favorite era of rap is the Soulquarians movement. So Common, I've got a good Common story as well, but maybe I'll say that for later. So Common, The Roots, Dilla, obviously, Mos Def,
Kylie.
Yeah, that sort of vibe. Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, Jill Scott. So that sort of soulful hip hop sound is really my thing. So that's what I always wanted to make, but I just couldn't really do it in the way I want. The analogy I'd give is George Lucas in the 70s versus George Lucas in the 90s and early 2000s. So he had that vision for Star Wars, but he was limited at the time by the technology. Although it's still dope, obviously.
Yeah.
And one of the critiques was that when he had access to the technology to realize his vision in its entirety, it sort of killed some of the performance of the actors.
I preferred the old CGI, mate, when they had mirrors on the bottom of the...
There's something to be said for it, definitely. Which I think is something to... Which maybe... this is a mad tangent, but maybe why there's a big appreciation, say, for the recent sort of Mission Impossible and Top Gun franchises, because it's sort of traditional action scenes and stunts over excessive green screen. But that's another discussion. So I think I'm sort of the latter day George Lucas now with the tools at my disposal, nice studios, easy, access to equipment, resources, loads of singers to work with to fully realize the vision that I always had and to do it on my terms and without external pressures. But there's something to be said for the earlier works. It's all part of the journey. My preference is for my later material, but I can't be ungracious for those fans.
Can't discount your education.
Yeah, exactly. You can't get to PhD without doing your GCSEs and A-levels or kindergarten even. So it's all part of being in the dojo. Yeah, bro, come on,
it's reps. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to start at the basics. But I'm very honored that you had that attention to detail and you paid mind to it, that you noticed. That if you also notice, you'll see that when in my earlier tracks, I rap at a much higher register. Whereas now it's a lot. But it's because I wasn't relaxed.
Because you're relaxed,
Now I'm not stressed about, oh man, I've got only this amount of time in the studio that I'm paying for.
I need to get 8 tracks in an
you know
hour.
what I mean? Yeah. I'm comfortable and stuff. I know what I sound good at
also,
doing.
now your soul's not in a hurry internally.
Yeah.
Where before, it wasn't just the studio time. You were like, I need to get this out there because people need to know me now.
Exactly.
Now you're like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to give it to you whenever I'm ready to give it to you.
And I still work hard at it, but it doesn't negate that sense of comfort. Like we're saying, like, if you like it, cool. If you don't, cool. You know what I mean? There's so much creativity out there, but, I rate myself and I know who rates me in, in terms of, bro, I've had Stormzy come up to me to show me love. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I've had love from like Getz, from Dave, you know what I mean? So like a younger generation or from different genres of rap show me love. Also from people, from the classic, like Easy Mo B, who produced Biggie Impact. I've had love from him. I've had Malice from Clips, you know what I mean? There's so many, like, to the point where I forget, you know what I mean? But I think what I've learned as I matured is to just have that inner sense of peace, contentment, where it's nice to get this praise and acclaim and adulation and encouragement from peers and people who are, at the top of the food chain in the industry, but that doesn't validate my existence as all. There's a world beyond this as well, and in many ways, being good to your family, friends, community, that's more important. You know what I mean? Or we're at the hotel now. You know what I mean? Just making sure you're saying thank you to everyone who's on the door, because. Bro, we know there's people that are maybe not earning a lot of money, you know what I mean? And then they're in your service, so you can't be on like a conceited, vainglorious vibe, man. So it's nice.
But also, as you get older, you start to realize that the scale of success changes inside you and in your brain.
Yeah, that's a very astute observance.
Like you get halfway there and then you're like, oh, okay, all of that stuff that I thought was success was not.
Yep.
Success is how I raise my kids, and success is, how I am with my wife, and success is, do you know what I mean? Like where before it's all like monetary and how many people know me, and kind of like early Facebook. Let me see if I can get to those 20,000 friends and do you know what I mean?
Right,
Where now it's just like you start to, like, none of us are getting out of this alive. Like, do you know what I mean? And you start to realize that.
Bro, it's very sobering. It's very sobering, man. But it doesn't have to be morbid or negative.
For
you're
sure.
aware of your place in existence. I always use this, like I said, I love my cosmology and astrophysics. I always look at the Ptolemaic and Copernican model of the universe. So as a younger individual, it's a Ptolemaic model where the Earth is at the center of the solar system and the sun and the planets are orbiting around you. But as you mature, it switches to the Copernican model where the sun is at the center. So it's like your family, your community You know what I mean? And you have responsibilities and duties and service towards them, and you're orbiting around them. And the phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, leader eats last.
Yeah.
Leadership is service. I actually saw an interview with Leo Cohn, who was the former head of Def Jam, and it was so profound because he was describing, and this is a guy who's, paved the way with so many rappers. He's like, I didn't see myself as a leader. I saw myself as a servant. And he is a big guy in the industry, and a guy with like a serious reputation as well. I was like, wow, like I didn't expect to hear that level of humility. And it's interesting because Nori was interviewing him for his podcast, and he was saying how he always backed his artists. Like he would go all the way to back, and Nori was saying he was doing a video shoot, and Leo Cohn was like, I'm there. And he didn't even ask him where he was, and like in an hour's time he was there. So it's like, wow, that level of service and devotion. It's deep, man. It's deep. And accountability as well, and self-auditing.
Yeah, it gets changed. Like, one of my favorite quotes, and I'm sure you know it is, a man has two lives. The second one starts when he realizes he only has one.
Ooh, deep.
So that is just like, for me, I'm just like, oh, okay. That makes sense. I want to round it all up with spoken word.
Full circle.
Spoken word.
Yes.
Is very touch and go for me. Because I see the intricacies in it.
Yep.
I see the talent in it.
Yep.
I see the IQ in it. I see a lot of things in it. And then I see the other side of it. The pretentiousness.
Interesting.
The very kind of look at me, the very I'm smarter than you.
Right.
The very, because there's a lot of spoken word, and then there's stuff like sun rays, clouds, crashing, water under my toes, and then you get the, and I'm just like, come on, mate. Like, I that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like if I can't think while hearing and analyze and if you can't take me somewhere, then that's just it for me. I can't deal with that. Like when I hear spoken word, I need to be thinking, I wish I thought of that one. Like, I see why you put those words together. Oh my God, I see what you're saying. I can hear what you're telling me, even though the words are completely taking everyone else the other direction. But I can see what you're really, do you know what I mean? Like that kind of, I know art is in the eye of the beholder or whatever.
Of course, subjective.
But sometimes it's, and then when they bring their own symbols, thunder.
I'm not saying that.
Get out of here, man. I'm not dealing with,
Well, I'm not saying that's the theatre element. I think every scene has its strengths and weaknesses. And I think my journey has enabled me to be the etic and emic, let me get it right, both observer and observed. So I definitely know. When I entered the spoken word scene, bear in mind, I was coming at it with a rapper's mind state. So I was like, right, people are like shook to perform. I was like, bro, if you know what I've been through on stage, like crazy stuff, you know what I mean? Like in terms of, shall we say, physical violence and stuff and threats and all that sort of stuff. So that took me back, and like people reading off the phones and stuff like, and then people making.
I've never understood that. And when I see people in the studio doing that too, I don't know if you do it or not. I don't understand that. I'm like, how do you not know your own lyrics? I don't get it.
So I'm devil's advocate is the wrong word. In defense of that, so my personal take on it is that, okay, with rap, I think these are generalizations, and again, PhD could maybe put this to the empirical test. Maybe rap draws certain types of personalities. Obviously, there's many, but maybe it draws more confident types, more combative types, those who are more extrovert. And like I say, generally, especially if you're a younger artist and if you've come up maybe through battle rap or drill or grime, you're going to have to clash. It's gladiatorial.
Ready to go anytime,
Exactly. So you don't really have the luxury of like, oh, guys, like, I'm a bit nervous. This is my first time and I'm going to have to read off, you know what I mean? But there is a downside of that is it can also be an intimidating place and maybe not as open and welcoming as the spoken word scene.
It's not going to be any more welcoming and less intimidating if you're not doing it and looking like you know what you're doing.
So as an outsider coming into the spoken word scene, I was quite taken aback from my experiences anyway. It's seemingly how open-minded everyone was, how supportive, encouraging, accepting. If people slipped up, you're not going to get booed off stage or embarrassed or humiliated. So there's virtue in that. However, and this is where I'm leaning towards your perspective as well. In the long term, and I'm saying this with love and no judgment, so for my spoken word poetry family, I don't think it always assists emerging artists in perfecting their stagecraft. Because you have that crutch if you're reading it off your phone or out of a book. That said, a book reading or a poetry recital is a slightly different beast to a slam poetry contest or an open mic spoken word night. So you might get a poet who is about, I've published, so I could come. And actually, when I do my spoken word performances, I just actually start off from the book. So it's like a gentle introduction and then bang, I go hard. And then I bring it back. It's a oscillating wave. It's a bit like Shakespeare. You'll have a moment of tension and drama. For instance, in Macbeth, the assassination of the king, followed by a moment of comedy. Then back to like high tension and drama. So I take them on that roller coaster ride. So I think there is virtue and beauty in that. It is from my experience, maybe a more accepting space and a more gentle introduction into sharing your work publicly. But in the long term, if you want to do it seriously as a professional, committed creative, you have to let go of that crutch. And I don't think there's probably enough people in the spoken word scene
who are going to say that.
That would say that and give that tough love.
Well, look, I'm not in the spoken word scene and I'm going to say whatever I want. I would go as far as saying that if you have to read from your phone, you're fraudulent. In a sense where
I probably
you don't believe what you're saying and it's not coming from you and what you're writing is what you think people want to hear and not what you want to say.
Interesting.
Because when I write, they're my children. I don't forget my children's names. I know all my children's names. Do you know what I mean? If I write something, I'm writing what my heart is telling me and what my mind knows.
Yeah.
I don't need, like when I used to write stuff, lyrics, and I used to write tracks in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I used to remember them after reading them twice. Do you know what I mean?
You've got good memory.
Like, yeah, I've got a
better than mine.
But what I'm saying is because they came from that, I feel like if you're writing something, if you're spitting in the studio and you're writing something, unless you've literally just sat there and written it on your phone as you're listening to the beat for the first time, that's one thing. But if you're coming into the studio after I've written this for a while and you have to read it, it's not who you really are. Whatever you're saying is not a real representation of you. Because if it was, you wouldn't need it there.
All right, I'm going to do a retort now, and it's a retort with love. So I think this is an interesting argument. Could that same hypothesis be applied if you are a live musician playing in an orchestra, playing in a performance which you've done many times, but you still have the sheet music in front of you, and you have the conductor?
But you've just proven my point. Sheet music is not who they are. They didn't write the music, right?
Oh, this is getting very interesting.
They're playing something they've been told to play for someone else. They have no internal connection to that music because it didn't come from their soul. It's not spawned of them.
Does that take away?
Doesn't mean they don't love it. It doesn't mean they don't appreciate it. It doesn't mean they don't train it. But it's not of them. Now, I guarantee you, Mozart would not have had his sheet music in the beginning.
Mozart was a genius.
Well, but what I'm saying is, those kind of people, like for example, they have that sheet music there, but I guarantee you, if you took it away, they could still play it.
I don't know. Do you know what we need to get? This would, I think, would not resolve the debate, but would maybe emic an ethic view. If we could bring in a classical musician.
Could you bring in a piano next time and put it here, and we need another instrument over there, and if we musicians.
And if we brought in a poet who, but now there is a poet I know called Deanna Roger, who, when she performs live, she's doing it out of a book, but it's more a prompt.
Is that part of the look?
Do you know what? I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I've performed after her, and she's a hard actor for her. She is an animated performer who injects every fiber of her being into her movement, her stage presence. She is amazing. But she's reading out of a book. And I wouldn't for a second think those aren't her words. She doesn't feel them. I think what would be best to resolve this would for us to have someone who is an advocate for performing
For
for
both, and someone who isn't.
yeah, from that scene.
Yeah.
I would feel unjust to speak on their behalf. I know for me, my problem, but I'm from a rap background first. So like I say, for me, that was something I hadn't experienced before. But having listened with an open mind from, and like I said, there's different types of poetry performances. So there are some where it is literally just a reading from the book. And maybe that person isn't the type of performer where they're trying to get the crowd hyped. They're a page poet. There's a few poets who are as good on the page as they're on stage. There's another gentleman called Lionheart, or Lionheart Felt, if you look at his social media handle. And he's also a radio presenter. Actually did his show for BBC Radio London about a month and a half ago. He's a very eloquent gentleman. His stuff is as amazing on the page as it is performed. And they're two very different things. I had a poetry book that I self-published in 2018. And I conferred with him a lot before I released it because I could just write down rap lyrics. But I wanted to do it in a way where it worked on the page. So I was thinking a lot more about the layout. I also had a lot of notes and footnotes, that sort of thing. I worked with...
Do you remember it? Okay, 6 months after you
I don't
published
remember what I wrote for my PhD.
No, but 6 months after 6 months after you published it, could you have quoted me a poem from it?
Nah, no way, bro. No way. I had 24 poems in there. It's like 150, 200
I find that
pages.
crazy. I find that crazy.
But
that you
also let me get, I was saying this to Adam on the way down. Since I returned to making music in 2018, I've recorded 12 albums in less than 5 years. That's hundreds of songs. It's like Lil Wayne. Like Lil Wayne struggles to remember. I mean, he doesn't even write his stuff down. So for me, just juggling all the stuff I've got in my life and how on point I have to be at all times and how I have to compartmentalize every department of my life. It's not the younger version of me where I'd get up in the morning and it would be like going to the gym. Religiously, 8 a.m. in the morning, I get up and practice rapping for 2 hours straight every single day. I was that committed to it. And even now when I write, I rehearse my stuff before I go in the studio. I'll be in the gym, bro. I used to do it lifting weights. It's hard to like balance your headphones. So now I normally do it on the treadmill. So I can literally put it there. I'll just be there like, on the treadmill. 13-degree incline, 4.23 speed.
People are watching and thinking, this guy's filming himself rapping on a treadmill.
But I'm so busy, I have to multitask. Do you see what I mean? So I think to wrap it all up and do so in a way where I'm very open to what you're saying, but I think I'm trying to be fair to every lived experience here. For me, there's things that I personally wouldn't do, but having been exposed to a different way of doing things and tried to listen to their cases that they present, I'm like, all right, I wouldn't do it that way, but I understand. For me, yeah, definitely, I prefer to memorize my stuff before I go on stage because then I can just project my voice, flow it better, make eye contact with the audience, segue out, do little ad-libs, have some little jokes in there, I mean, come back to the line that I was in, because I know it inside out. If you're there like, so yeah, I hear what you're saying, bro, but I think definitely let's get some poets on, some classical musicians.
We'll get them on, bro.
Hear their side of the argument. I can learn from them as well.
Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I feel
Pleasure's
like
been mine.
Next time you're down, we need to do episode 2.
Yeah, the sequel.
There's a lot more that we need to unpack there.
Nah, bro, you're an amazing host. It's been so
I appreciate
fascinating.
you, bro. I want you to finish off by giving a bit of advice on how linguistics could help people in their everyday lives and what maybe a few coaching tips of how they can use it to their advantage. Into that camera there, which is your camera.
This camera. So the question was, how can linguistics assist people in their everyday lives? We were talking about code switching earlier, and I was talking about it in a way where it's not a bad or a contrived thing. It's a resource at our disposal to navigate different sections of society. So I think it's all about cultivating an emotional awareness and intelligence and understanding of the different communities, socioeconomic groups that you meet, different languages that are spoken, different cultures, different ethnicities, different religions, and trying to find the commonalities within those groups. Obviously, there's going to be so many things that we disagree on. We have different experiences, but try and find those common things. I remember back to a project I did at art college, and it was looking at the refugee experience. And we were trying to create greater empathy amongst Brits for people who are coming from other countries who had fled political turmoil or war or prejudice. So we had testimonies from refugees, people from a refugee background, talking about their kids or marriage or birthdays or hopes and dreams. So I think that these are these shared lived experiences that we all have as humans that we can connect through language and like, oh, what's your name? Tell me something about yourself, something about your passions, your hopes, your dreams, where have you traveled, these sorts of things. So I think it's about listening rather than talking, which might sound slightly paradoxical, referring to linguistics, but giving the invitation to the other person to speak first and let them share a bit about themselves. That's probably a little thing that I've learned in this journey called life.
No, I love that, love that. Again, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you, and we do need to get in because I feel like there's another 2 hours worth of your life that we need to cover.
It'd be lovely.
But we'll
Thank
get that
you so
in,
much.
no problem. Dude, it's been emotional.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Boom.